Hey guys! So welcome to your fourth video lecture, Mitosis and Meiosis. As usual, make sure you have in front of you a pen or a pencil, piece of paper, and get ready to take some notes. Your objective for this lecture is student will be able to analyze mitosis and meiosis in order to describe how their cells divide. Now I'm talking about both body cells and sex cells in this lecture. So, mitosis. We're going to first talk about three different things. What is it? What does it mean? And what happens? Okay? So, focusing on what is it? Mitosis is the process eukaryotic cells do to grow and produce new body cells. Just like anytime you get a cut and you put a Band-Aid over it, it's not that the Band-Aid's magical and it heals itself. It's actually your cells undergoing mitosis to create new cells to heal that hole in your skin. Okay, sorry to burst your bubble if you thought the Band-Aid was magical, but we gotta grow up sometime. Right? So moving on to what does it mean? Okay, mitosis means division of the nucleus. Okay, notice that nucleus is right in the definition, which means that it does not occur in prokaryotic cells, because prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. We are only talking about eukaryotic cells. Okay, so what happens in mitosis? Ultimately, one cell divides to make two new identical cells. The new cells are called daughter cells. Okay? There are several phases of mitosis, so you'll need to make yourself a little chart. Across the top, have one column that says phase, and a second column that says main events. Okay? In your phase column, we're going to put the following words: interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and last but not least, cytokinesis. Okay? So as we go through this, the main event for each phase is going to pop up right here in this column, and over here on the side will be a visual. Okay, the visual is going to change kind of like a flip book as we go through. So let's get started with interphase. Interphase is pretty much all the time the cell spends doing whatever it does other than making copies of itself. Okay, so this is when your cell is just existing and living and being happy as can be. It's growing and it replicates its DNA. Okay, moving on to prophase. At prophase, spindle fibers form at the poles. I've capitalized poles here because that's going to be our key word for prophase. Spindle fibers form at the poles, the chromosomes become visible, and the nuclear membrane disappears. So here on our little donut picture, you can see our visible chromosomes, and at the poles at either end of the donut, our spindle fibers are forming. Okay. So then, after prophase, we have metaphase. In metaphase, the chromosomes line up in the middle of the cell. Again, middle is in all caps because that's our key word for metaphase, right? So, as you can see on our donut, our chromosomes once were all in the middle here in kind of a jumble. Now they're in a nice line, all lined up. They're ready to split. So in anaphase, the chromosomes are pulled apart by the spindle fibers. Apart is our key word, all in caps, for anaphase. Alright, so you look over here at our picture, and our chromosomes have moved apart to either end of the cell. They are no longer X's, but they have been split in two. After anaphase, we have telophase. During telophase, finally two new cells and nuclear membranes begin to form. So we can see that our cell is actually starting to pull itself apart completely. The little white sprinkles here are the nuclear membranes forming around the chromosomes and the DNA, which makes sense because we know the DNA and chromosomes are kept in the nucleus. And finally, lastly, our final phase is cytokinesis, which is when the cells completely divide and two new cells are fully formed. Okay? So I want to highlight for you keywords that we have for prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and cytokinesis. Those are all in caps. Poles for prophase, middle for metaphase, anaphase is apart, telophase is to, and cytokinesis is completely. Okay, take a minute to write that down. I'm going to move on. Okay, so that's mitosis. Mitosis takes place in all of your body cells except for your sex cells. So just like when we started with mitosis, we had 3 different things to write down. We have 3 different things for meiosis. What is it? What does it mean? And what happens? Okay, both of these processes occur in our cells, but they are quite different. So meiosis, what is it? It is the process of creating genetically varied sex cells. Okay, so not only are we talking about sex cells instead of body cells, but the cells that are created are not identical to one another. In mitosis, all cells created in mitosis are identical copies. In meiosis, sex cells are genetically varied. They are not identical. All right, so we'll move on to what does it mean? Meiosis means to divide and diminish. Okay, so to divide and diminish, that means that we're going to have a different set of outcome cells here than in mitosis. And let's find out what that is and what happens. So during meiosis, one gamete divides to make 4 new gamete cells. The new cells are genetically different from the parent gamete. So we said it divides and diminishes because the 4 gamete cells are going to be smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and actually contain less material in them than their parent. Okay, so what are sex cells? I think we all know this, but just as a review. Male sex cell is the sperm. Female sex cell is the egg. Okay, this is a microscopic photograph taken under a scanning electron microscope. So with meiosis, these are the only 2 types of cells we're talking about, sperm and eggs. Mitosis is everything else. Did I say? Meiosis. Meiosis is sperm and eggs. Mitosis is everything else. Mitosis is your skin cells, your eye cells, your fingernail cells, your toenail cells, your tongue cells, your eyelash cells. Okay? Meiosis is just these 2. So, getting into meiosis, we have some new vocabulary. First of all is the word gamete, which means sex cell. Second, we have a word haploid. And often with haploid, it will come with this N, this small n in parentheses. A haploid is a cell with 23 chromosomes, which is actually half the normal number that humans usually have. All gametes are haploid cells. On the other hand, we have a diploid cell, which is denoted to capital N. A diploid cell is a cell with 46 chromosomes, which is the normal amount of chromosomes that human cells usually contain. So gametes, sex cells, are all haploid cells. All our other cells are diploid cells. So those are the skin cells, the brain cells, any tissue, muscle cells. Those are all diploid cells. Okay? So we said that meiosis produces genetically varied copies, and this happens because of a process called crossing over. Here we have the definition of crossing over, a process that creates genetic variation. Okay? This occurs when something called homologous chromosomes exchange genes. Now, get this word down in your notes. Homologous, which means paired up, chromosomes. On the next slide, I'm going to show you a picture, a short animation of what I mean by homologous chromosomes. Okay, so because of crossing over, that's why 2 sex cells are not the same. Okay, so let's break down the process of crossing over. First, we're going to start with our chromosomes. Right here, notice we have a label, sister chromatids. Sister chromatids are those chromosomes that are inside their corresponding color box. Okay, so the two red chromosomes, these are sister chromatids, and then the blue strands are sister chromatids. Okay, so crossing over occurs when non-sister chromatids touch. So we see this red leg is touching this blue leg, as you can see in the circle I provided for you. When that happens, when they then return to their original position, they have gained genetic material from the non-sister chromatid. Okay, they trade. Eventually, as meiosis goes on, these X's split into single pieces and become 4 daughter chromosomes to make the 4 gamete cells. And I've highlighted in black to show you, I want you to notice that right here they're connected, and then here these are no longer connected. They are all separate. Okay. Here's a visual of meiosis as a whole. Okay. We start up here with our gamete, and our homologous chromosomes pair up. So the light blue goes with light blue, dark blue goes with dark blue, right? Over here, we're going to undergo crossing over. We don't actually see them touching, but we know it happened because they've traded genetic information by this step. And then meiosis pretty much proceeds in 2 steps. We have meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. And from here we have 1, and then it undergoes it again, and we end up with 4 different cells. Okay, so that's your introduction to meiosis and mitosis. Your next step is to go and take the lecture quiz, and I will see you in class.